Hello and welcome to Nerd Alert. What I've got here today is an Arvin tube AM receiver radio. Now I've gone ahead and taken all the tubes out, but what we're going to do is attempt to restore this, and what needs to be done is basically recapping. I also need to do some tests on the tubes to make sure they're in working order, but the recapping is basically replacing a lot of these paper capacitors and some of the electrolytics, well, all of the electrolytics, with new electrolytics and probably some plastic or polypropylene capacitors to replace some of the paper ones. So we'll be replacing electrolytics and we'll be replacing paper caps. This radio was one that my grandfather had installed at the bar in the basement, which is actually just over here. I will be cleaning it up as well, probably replace the incandescent light bulb here that illuminates the frequency readout with an LED, draw less power, and it might be a little bit brighter as well to illuminate this nice display. This is, like I said, an Arvin radio, and I went ahead and downloaded the schematic for it, so I'll have some ideas on what voltages and resistances I can test for at some test points. We can also do an alignment on it and make sure that the dial is reading out what actual frequency it's on. This is the first time I've done this, so I've definitely going to be taking some safety precautions. The first thing I did after pulling it out was I used a variac to basically turn the voltage, AC voltage input to it slowly up to 110 volts to make sure that nothing catches fire or any magic smoke gets let out. And I noticed that the tubes did warm up correctly. And then I went ahead and was curious, for safety reasons, what voltage the chassis was at. And sure enough, the chassis was at 110 volts AC potential. So that would have been bad to touch, especially if I were grounded, and I went ahead and touched that and completed the circuit. So what I decided to do was create what's called a dim bulb tester. It doesn't actually test for dim bulbs, it uses a bulb, and it's for a test setup. So I've wired this up here, and essentially I believe it's a 300 watt light bulb, and it's in series with this wall outlet that I've wired up, and it also is plugged into the variac. Like I said, since the voltage of the chassis was at 110 volts at line potential, I looked, and as it turns out, this is a two-prong plug, old-fashioned, not a three-prong plug, and it's also not polarized. The outlet connector for this plug does not have one of them that's slightly wider that the newer polarized plugs have. So not only is it not a three-prong plug, you can pick which way you want to plug it in to the circuit. And I chose incorrectly the first way, plugged it in, and the hot side was actually connected to the chassis. Therefore, I went ahead and made a mark on this plug, and I'll probably end up replacing this with a polarized plug so nobody else will make the same mistake, and at least it will be plugged in such a way that the chassis will be neutral and the chassis will not be at line potential. In addition, with this dim bulb tester that we have here, if there were a short circuit in here, perhaps a poor soldering job on my part, or something that gets shorted out to the chassis, rather than taking the full line voltage across that short, since it's in series through this bulb, the bulb will actually light up. The bulb being a 300 watt bulb, figure 100 and some odd volts, 300 watts, you're looking at about 3 amps is the maximum that this circuit will allow. This could be a dead short in this outlet, and it will still only allow 3 amps of current. Now 3 amps of current is still plenty to kill you, so it's more of a safety of the device and less of a safety of the person working on it. The person working on it still has to have their due diligence done to make sure that they don't short or touch any charged capacitors or any leads that are at high voltage when testing it live with everything plugged in and with the power applied as the test procedures require. So coming up, we will be doing the recapping and restoration of this, and that's it for today. A brief introduction to the channel, Nerd Alert. The intention of the channel, Nerd Alert, is to be a technology-based channel where me and some of my friends potentially will get involved in some technology-based things, whether it's radio restoration, amateur radio, or ham radio as it's called, perhaps some computer, some open source, some Linux, and also some cybersecurity. So we'll have a variety of topics on this channel, and I hope everyone enjoys the channel. So our first video will be about the restoration of this radio, and I believe our second video that we're currently thinking about may be amateur radio related. So anyway, that's a little bit about the channel, Nerd Alert, and I hope you enjoy. Thank you.